My name is John Wildman. I am from the Film Society of Lincoln Center in New York. And I flew down here specifically to talk to a couple guys and that I was very, very, very excited about. And our very first one, right now, Mr. Robert Englund. Okay, I love the, just diving right into this. Freddy Kruger. That character went very, very quickly from just being a single character in a single film to taking you for just a lifelong ride. From your perspective, why do you think that happened?
Before I answer this, I just want to say something. John here was very modest and self-deprecating a minute ago down here, and he threw away casually the Film Society of Lincoln Center. If any of you are fortunate enough to get to New York, this is a place you always check out what's being screened there. It's everything you've ever loved, everything the French have ever loved, everything from early John Cassavetes 16mm films to the most hardcore horror to the Hidden Fortress, which inspired Star Wars. It's a wonderful, phenomenal, brilliant American institution, and I'm really honored, to be here with John. Now, did I believe ever that this character in a low-budget horror movie conceived of by the then auteur, Wes Craven, wrote it and directed it, would achieve some strange cultural, international, iconic status? No. None of us had any idea at all. I remember one afternoon scolding Sean Cunningham from the original Friday 13th, who had come to help Wes shoot second unit, and poor little Heather Langenkamp, nubile, gorgeous, Oklahoma, preppy, the promise of Brooke Shields' beauty because she's tinier and you can spin her around, stepped on a nail, 14 hours into a 24-hour deal, and I had to stand up and be a man and defend her. And we were just trying to get through it, you guys. And we knew we had done a good job on a special project, but none of us thought anybody would ever see it. And in fact, I think one of the great origins of Nightmare on Elm Street is that it wasn't hyped. It wasn't jammed down your throats. Now with all the merchandising and the wonderful European posters and the Asian posters that you guys bring me to sign here and the action figures, etc. When the first two films came out, New Line Cinema was a very small company, going broke, releasing Liv Ullmann films. And the movie only opened regionally. And I was literally in New York at the old Roosevelt Hotel in the Diamond District on 47th Street in Madison. Laurence Olivier, Dustin Hoffman. Is it safe? The Diamond Market. If you've seen Marathon Man, you know what I'm talking about. And in the rain, my fans, sitting next to William Shatner signing autographs for Star Trek and me signing autographs for V, in the rain, my fans morphed from sci-fi fans that were starved for something new on television because there was no science fiction on American television in 1983, to heavy metal, speed metal, Ramones fans, punk rock fans, in the rain, in black leather, as far as the eye could see outside. And that's when I knew, because the film had only been released regionally. That was the moment I knew something's going on here.
Well, and here, you came, when you did Nightmare, you were stringing together TV appearance after TV appearance, Soap, Simon & Simon, Charlie's Angels. You were just doing TV appearances. You had Milius's classic surfing movie, Big Wednesday. It wasn't like, you weren't a kid who just stumbled onto something, you were working. So I mean, as an actor, what does that do to your head where you go, hold on, now I'm this guy?
Well, I was a snob in the theater. I was a snob. I was going to do Harold Pinter and Shakespeare and Sam Shepard plays and live in Chicago or Dallas, and get a cool little house, a little craftsman house outside of town or in Fredericksburg or Austin, and be a regional theater actor, and do art. And then I came to Hollywood, and the first 4 auditions I went on were starring roles with Jan Michael Vincent, who was the biggest thing since James Dean. In fact, he had James Dean's agent. I starred with Henry Fonda, Susan Sarandon, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sally Field. I was the sidekick and the best friend and the redneck. And then I morphed into television. And I lost a little bit of my snobism at that time. And Wes taught me to respect the horror genre. And at some point, I think, in the late 80s, I had this revelation. I remembered who I was when I was 14 years. I remembered the 14-year-old boy in me who'd gone to the Saturday matinee and seen horrors of the Black Museum, and who debated in line in the 3rd grade and gotten in trouble and sent to detention because none of us boys could figure out what the creature was in Forbidden Planet. It is a saber-toothed tiger. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. Arms distance, stand at attention. Where's my sack lunch? It's a saber-toothed tiger. Shut up. And we had no pause control back then, you guys. We didn't have cable. We didn't have stop, pause, slow-mo. We had to sit up at 11 o'clock at night when our parents were in Lake Tahoe and eat bad popcorn in Sears sleeping bags and look real careful, to see how Frankenstein hung Igor on that hook. We only got one chance. And I remembered that. I remembered reading Life Magazine Goes to the Movies, a coffee table book, when I was 9 years old. And I loved the classic horror section from the 1930s with a 2-page fold-out of Bride of Dracula and a great photo of Frankenstein throwing that little girl in the lake. And earlier on in the silent screen section, all along on 2 pages, open up with the spine of the book here, little postage stamp photos of every single makeup Lon Chaney had ever done, including some movie called Zanzibar, where he'd hard-boiled an egg, cracked the shell, took the placenta off the hard-boiled egg, and wrapped it around his eyeball to make it look milky and dead. Is that the first contact lens? Methinks so, Lon. At any rate, I found that person again. I'd hidden him away with Robin's egg nest blue tights that I was wearing doing Romeo, and all my snob theater thing. I buried this 14-year-old boy that is part of me because I'd, been taught all of this, and this is good stuff, but I've been taught all this stuff in the theater that I was supposed to love. And I think that Wes was the one that made me respect it first. I had, some silent little cheap thrill favorites that I loved, like Brian De Palma's Sisters, and then some counterbalancing fabulous classy horror, like Deborah Carr and The Innocents, Jack Cardiff, blah, blah, blah. So I had that in me, and it was all kind of percolating. And now I'm proud, and now that you guys are the majority instead of the minority now that sci-fi, fantasy, horror fans, gamers, comic book experts, now that you guys are propelling popular culture, you're getting your revenge. But for a while, we all had to sit in the bad table in the back of the commissary at Paramount Studios, with the waiters coming through the door with a little window in it, not the best seat. We couldn't sit up there in the front with the cast of Cheers. Where is Shelley Long? Okay.
Because of when I watch a film, and I'll talk for films for everyone in the room, like Zombie Strippers and 2001 Maniacs. You strike me as someone who's having more fun on screen than anyone should seriously be allowed. Are you just the biggest faker in the world, or am I right?
No, it's actually an easier answer. What happened was, I did a reality show in 2004, the year that followed Freddy vs. Jason. Freddy vs. Jason was a huge mega hit. And I got involved with this great producer, Star Price, who does Penn and Teller's Bullshit. And we went off on the road all over America with a skeleton crew, the same guys that shot the original Amazing Race and shot the original Survivor. And it was this great idea for a film about your nightmares. And we would pick the best ones and bring you back to LA and then stage your nightmare for $1 million and put you in it. Great idea, huh? And I bought into it, and I was the host. Hello, my name is Robert Englund. I understand there's a nightmare on your street. After we'd vetted the person and found out that they weren't, bipolar and gonna hang themselves. And there was this great shot of me walking through the back streets of Boston. Ooh, it's wicked tough, And so I spent a year doing that, and the network couldn't vet. The legal department couldn't clear the people that we had chosen. So there's a year of my life gone. And next to my bed, my wife has stacked alphabetically all of these scripts that have come to me since Freddy vs. Jason. And the first half a dozen I read were this sort of new, low-budget, indie comedy horror that he's talking about. And I began to do them, or Smart, Behind the Mask, and Hatchet, and Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer, and Zombie Strippers, and they are another sub-genre of horror. We have all these sub-genres now, whatever you want to call them. I hate the word torture porn, because I think that the original Saw is a great classic film, and a natural punk horror reaction to the bloated CGI crap that was floating around at that time. But we, just like the music industry, we're getting splintered, the film industry is getting splintered, and within science fiction, fantasy, horror, we have subgenres and subheads. And I just played with this for a while. I'm getting old, and I can't do pratfalls much longer. So it was really wonderful for me to do Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer and get to bang into doors and see if I can still do that stuff. Because it's fun to do that every once in a while. And it's also fun to work with the new young kids, Scott Klosserman, Tim Sullivan, Adam Green, all these kids. It's really fun for me to work with them. And Jay Lee. These guys are smart and funny. And they were the ones that were told that the comic book they liked and that the horror movie they liked, was lame and wrong or violent all their lives. And now they're starting to really make a dent in it. So they represent that subgenre. And I really had fun playing in it. That doesn't mean that as we sit here right now in Newport Beach, California, I'm in a movie with Robert Patrick, The Terminator, Lance Hendrickson, Aliens 3, Hal Holbrook, A National Treasure, Kathy Baker, Samantha Mathis, Pump Up the Volume, a wonderful little Peckinpah movie. I go other places. I do, a straight fare, but I have this respect that I discovered via Wes Craven, and I also feel I owe it not only to you, but to the genre. If my name attached to it will bring people in, and I believe in these people. I got to tell you, the sequel script to Behind the Mask is absolutely remarkable, and we're all struggling to get that financed right now. But there's some great stuff out there, and so I support all kinds. That doesn't mean that I hate a big budget horror movie that's good, or a midline horror movie that's good. I've defended Silence of the Lambs to people that think, oh, it's a studio movie, blah blah blah. No, I think it's a great movie. So anyway, I guess that sort of answers that.
And Behind the Mask, that is just a deliciously subversive movie. I think. Love that film. Absolutely. Now, well, and just to finish, and we have, I'm going to ask a couple more questions because I know we've got a lot of questions out here. But speaking of that, I mean, let's face it, you are a statesman of horror, a statesman of acting by this point. So when you're on the set, much like you said, mentioned a couple times here with Wes, like, kind of infusing a respect for it with you, do you find yourself kind of playing the mentor on set, kind of teaching the kids how to do this job the right way? I can't imagine you ducking into the trailer after you've done your pieces. I can't imagine that.
I never duck into the trailer. You know, I'm one of those actors that can't read a book on this set because I can only do one. I'm not a multitasker. It's just not part of my DNA. No, listen, one of the great gifts that's been given me as a result of Nightmare on Elm Street and V back to back, and now close to 80 feature films, but my genre films have given me a younger audience. You know, we mentioned earlier, you know, the original Nightmare, the punkers and the speed metal kids and the heavy metal kids and the Ramones fans, and then they became the Dorm Rats, you know, and then the Dorm Rats brother, and then the Dorm Rats goth sister. And now, exponentially, I'm on my third, maybe fourth generation of fans because I've been blessed by a timeline. It's a pure accident, you guys. But I came of age with MTV, video, then cable, then DVD, and now Blu-ray. And, you know, people discovered me on video, people discovered us on HBO and Showtime and the other cable stations. Movies that I've done that didn't do well theatrically, like Stephen King's The Mangler with Ted Levine from Sounds of the Lambs, that got rediscovered a couple of years ago on Cinemax, you know, and now it's sort of risen like cream in the Stephen King oeuvre. I mean, come on, you're on a desert island. Who do you want? Robert Englund in The Mangler or Emilio Estevez in Maximum Overdrive? Fight for Robert! Let's be honest here, guys. Some stuff, you know, I don't say it's ahead of its time, but we missed it. It fell through the cracks, you know, and so I just think that's what I mean by that.
Okay. Robert Englund, director. 976 Evil. Every once in a while, somebody rediscovers that wicked little, hot little movie and says, hey, what about this? And after that, you did a few Freddy's Nightmare episodes, but not a lot of directing after that. And I've always been curious, and of course you're Mr. Work, you're working all the time as an actor. Is that it, or you just don't have the projects that just interest you? Give us a clue as to why we're not seeing you behind the camera.
It's real simple, you guys. My biological clock is attuned to acting. Directing takes up a whole lot of time. I mean, like years of your life. And I spent all of, Nancy can help me, was it 2007 in Italy, scouting locations for an adaptation that Nancy and I worked on for 6 months with a girl named Chelsea Hemsfield of the Gorky, the Gogol short story, The Vij, which is a Yiddish folktale of a creature, not a Dybbuk, something else that punishes rabbinical students, and I turned it into a priest. The rabbinical student became a priest in my adaptation, and there was a little bit of an exorcism school hidden in there, and a village that had been guarded by a fallen angel, an angel of purgatory, who'd been punished and didn't know what to do, and the gravity and his fall to earth made him obese and pissed off. And he just happened to guard this sort of middle European village. And the village becomes like a Twilight Zone village. It's got one of everything. It's got the whore with the heart of gold. It's got this lesbian school teacher. Amanda Plummer as the lesbian school teacher, you know. Monica Bellucci as the whore with the heart of gold, you know. The young priest finds it shrouded in mist, you know. The rich man, the poor man, the thief, the butcher, you know, and it becomes this sort of Twilight Zone. Spent a year and a half of my life, you guys, traipsing around at hill towns in Calabria, and in northern Italy, in Piedemonte, and raising money and knocking on doors and rewriting the script and taking meetings, and I still believe in it, and I still have nightmares about it. But it's this timing, this consumption of time. I don't know what television show, what big love episode, or what guest star, or what little feature film that I might have enjoyed doing that I was asked to do then that I missed because I'm running around. Now, it's fun to be running around in Europe, don't get me wrong, but my clock doesn't like that thing with timing. I mean, maybe I could direct some plays again. That's a possibility. And there's a couple of movies that are being talked about, but they're extreme back burner. I just can't shift at this stage of my life to that commitment of time anymore because it's so frustrating. When you realize that Lily Zanuck, did you hear the last name Zanuck? Can I say Zanuck louder? Do you all know what I'm talking about when I say the Zanuck family? It's like saying Warner Brothers. It's like saying Goldwyn. That's like saying Metro Goldwyn Mayer. Zanuck. It took her 12 years to get Forrest Gump made. And she's a Zanuck, I'm only a Kruger.
And let's talk the only other thing we haven't talked about is your voice work. We've got we're hearing a lot of characters that are voiced by yourself. Talk about about that aspect because that's really been you've been doing a lot of that recently. Tell us about that.
Well, this is just easy. This is something I learned in the theater, and it's great that it's kind of come down the pike the last, several years. For a while I was the Riddler on the new Batman, and I was also in Justice League, and I was also Dr. Faustus, and I was the Vulture on the spectacular Spider-Man, and now I'm doing some stuff on Green Lantern and a new show about a slacker squirrel and a slacker raccoon called The Regulars on the Cartoon Network. And I just played the Stag of the Forest, half man, half stag. Please don't litter in my turf. And I just was with my old pal Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker last week. Yeah, doing that, Mark. And Mark loves this stuff. Mark, you guys think you're fanboys. Let me tell you right now, I put you up here with Mark Hamill, you lose on Jeopardy questions. This is the guy. I mean, this is his life. He loves it. He knew the day he got the script for Star Wars, it was going to be the biggest phenomenon of the 20th century. He's a smart guy, and this is his love. Mark has letters to the editor printed in Famous Monsters magazine when he was an army brat in Japan. I mean, he really is old school and hardcore. He knows everything. And he taught me also to respect the genre a lot. I mean, Mark Hamill and I had Thanksgiving together at one year. Mark took some presents over on Thanksgiving to the ILM boys in the San Fernando Valley, and I got to see this was the first time I'd ever seen scale-sized spaceships with soot on them and bullet holes and discolored rivets and all of that distressing. And as the scale sizes grew, it just became more and more miraculous, And so we brought them some good beer, and we brought them some good deli food because these guys have been working around the clock for George Lucas in the Valley and the first Star Wars, on a diet of Doritos, I think,
I love when things work out this way because my final question was a little bit of trivia, and I'd love to, ask, were you indeed responsible for telling Mark to audition for that role?
No, Mark's agent got him in on that. And I'm sure Mark knew more about Hollywood than I did. His ear was close to the ground. The story that I want to refute on the Wikipedia jungle drum of internet misinformation is I went up for the surfer in Apocalypse Now, which was played by Joe Bottoms, I believe. I wanted to go up for the Cookie, played by Freddie Forrest, who I looked like a little bit then. And I dressed in my tightest green Levi's and my best old combat boots and an army surplus shirt with the sleeves rolled up. And I'm like, 5'10", and in the prime of my life then with blonde curls going down my back. This is pre-Willie. And I walk in, you know, with my swimming muscles for the surfer, and I'm too old. And then I'm too young for the Freddie Forrest role of the cook. And I'm brokenhearted. And they look at me, and they're walking around me, and they send me across the hall to be looked at for Han Solo. But I was too young. I didn't look old enough to be a big brother to Mark at that time. We were too close, because I looked very, very young back then. And that's the story. I came home, Mark Hamill had a cold Heineken for me, and he's laying on my couch, and he's watching Mary Tyler Moore reruns. And I told him about all this, and Mark had also been in. He hadn't had his call back yet, but we talked about it. I mean, it was just that close. It was just that moment of time when you all shared that stuff. I think we played Monopoly that night with Melanie Mayron from 30-something. You know, it was just like a real, you know, it was just it was a lot easier. This is an unfortunate thing, and I know there's people out here that are prop people and effects people and makeup people, and I know there's probably a couple of screenwriters out here, you guys. But here's the thing. It was a lot easier to be poor when my generation was young and struggling in LA. It's harder for you guys, but you also guys have better access to information and to software and to communication than we did. You know, it was much harder for us to get through a door than it is for you. So it kind of balances out, you know, but that just means you guys can't eat. Let's do Q&A.
Okay, let's open this up. Right in the front.
Like your reality show, The Nightmare one? Can you share a nightmare of yours with us?
Well, I had to really, you know, search my memory for my nightmares when I wrote my book, because it was a gimmick that Simon & Schuster wanted. They wanted me to start every chapter of my book with a nightmare. And I realized I had to go to recurring things, you know, stuff that, you guys are so young, but there's stuff that just stays with you that you can't get rid of. And one of them was, and this is a movie nightmare, I went to a matinee birthday party at a movie matinee, and I think it was an Anthony Quinn movie, The Man from Del Rio, calling Anthony Quinn as the old gunfighter who's lost his edge, you know. And, you know, I'm like 8 years old, and we want to see this movie. It's a cowboy movie, and maybe next week it's going to be Forbidden Planet, and we're all sitting there with our Chico's bonbons and our hot buttered popcorn, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the matinee's over, and the evening movie begins at 3:15. And the first movie that came on, and I'm sitting there with the birthday party, there's 3 of us guys sitting there from Little League, and it's The Bad Seed, starring Patty McCorkindale. And it's this adult talkie adaptation of a Broadway play about bad DNA. And it opens with a little blonde girl in Princess Leia pigtails. She's lost the handwriting, the cursive handwriting contest at summer camp on the lake with the canoes, and she beats the little boy who won. As he crawls out of the pier, she beats his little goddamn hands with her tap shoes with a little half moon tap on the back of them, a little horseshoe tap. That's the only forensic evidence that's left on her. And then she burns her little tap shoes. She forces the janitor, under sort of a threat of pedophilia, to burn them, you know, in the bottom of the thing. Well, this is the first reel of this movie for the next 3 years of my life. And this is the 50s, you guys, late 50s. We got a little pink electric chair for girls and a little blue electric chair for boys. For the next 3 years of my life, girls with pigtails in my nightmares. Okay? Unbelievable. Hi-yi! Ah! You know. What's the Swedish one? Pippi Longstocking! Right. That was one of my early nightmares. Okay, right back here.
I know everybody has their favorite particular death sequence from the Nightmare movies. I love the one where you're puppeteering the kid, making him jump off the building. What's your favorite death sequence?
Well, on a sort of great supportive of who Freddy is level, I really love killing the kid with the hearing aid.
Yeah.
That's about as politically incorrect as Freddy could get, you know? Speaking of pump up the volume, you can hear a pin drop! You know? And he was Latino, so I got a double slap.
Yes.
After Freddy's Nightmare TV series, a couple of questions. A, why did you not more Walcott before running into the series? And B, why is it on TV?
Well, the problem with the television series Freddy Nightmares was they promised us, and by the way, ooh, is that Brad Pitt on episode number 3? Ooh. I mean, you can't believe who directed those shows and who's in them. What happened was they not only promised us a bigger budget and cut it, but we were promised that we were going to be on late at night, 11 o'clock or later, so we could really do some nasty stuff. Well, we wound up, and no offense to anybody here, but we wound up at like 6:30 or something in Texas, you know, and some parts of Texas are considered the Bible Belt, not Austin, but, you know, parts of Texas are a little conservative, and the network got in a heap of trouble, and it was hard to syndicate it. And then they cut the budget down, and I had talked every single crew member from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 into doing this, because I promised them if they did this show, and then went in, you know, right back to back with having done Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 with Rennie Harlan, that by the time we got done with the first season, they'd have enough money to get a house or a new car or have a baby. You know, these kids were working hard, and I'd worked with them with New Line on several films already. And this was going to be, but if we just can do it, we can just get through it, you know, by the end of this season, we're all going to be fat. And so I felt bad because I dragged all of these dear friends of mine, prop men and makeup men and stand-ins and these people with me. And it went down. What happened was we had a remarkably good producer named Gil Adler. And I think, and eventually what happened is we got canceled, or we just stopped making them. We had just almost enough to syndicate, but not quite. And that whole crew, and Gil Adler went over and saved Tales of the Crypt. Because Tales of the Crypt had become this overproduced, expensive vanity project, and it was going to get canceled. So I just look at history like this, that if Freddy's Nightmares hadn't been canceled, there would have been no Tales of the Crypt. And Tales of the Crypt went on to do some great stuff with some wonderful writers and some wonderful actors. But if you ever find the pilot for Freddy's Nightmares by Toby Hooper, check it out. The remake of Nightmare on Elm Street could have learned something from that. If you ever, I mean, there's episodes with some extraordinary actors. I mean, I remember showing up one day and I had to kill the original guy that played Bye Bye Birdie. And then he asked me out to lunch, and I went out to lunch with him, and it was like Dick Shawn and Mel Brooks. It was half the cast of It's a Mad, Mad, Mad. They're all friends. They're all like hanging out at some deli in the valley. It was like great talking to these guys. And so I just sort of share process experiences to kind of justify, you know, things that disappointed me in the past. The cancellation of that. The cancellation of the wonderful show I did with Wes, you know, Nightmare Cafe, you know, just ahead of its time. My God, we had Oscar-winning actors as our guest stars on that show. So you never know. You win some, you lose some in Hollywood. It's always the way. You know, we talk about things that fall through the cracks, or things that don't get noticed, or things that get rediscovered, like my Stephen King Mangler, things like that. Robert Hall, who's here, you know, you guys all found Laid to Rest on Showtime, you know, and now it's got a second win because Robert Hall delivers the goods. And, you know, this happens. You know, my business manager did a great little gem of a film called Suicide Kings, and some of those guys are here with Boondock Saints today. And that film didn't get embraced until it was discovered later. You know, this happens. This is another great thing about the internet and about cable and about DVD collections and about specific audiences now. That's a good thing. It's a positive. You know, I think, you know, like they say, talent will out. I think if you make a good little film and it disappears for a while, that people will discover it. You guys have a guest here, a guy I worship, Lucky McKee. May, is that a perfect goddamn movie? My God, I didn't see that coming. Whoa. And how about Anna Faris? Is she the best lesbian you've ever seen? Whoa. Don't hurt me. Okay, question.
Just want to know your thought on that new Nightmare on Elm Street movie because I did enjoy it.
Guys, you know, it's kind of talking out of school. Look at several alumni of that film are here. I'm a Hollywood dog, you guys. You know, I was born there. Everything gets remade. There's only X amount of stories ever in the world to tell. I mean, you can look at Greek mythology and Beowulf and oral tradition by the Southwestern natives, and it's still boy meets girl, you know, boy meets boy, whatever. It's just the same goddamn stories, you know, with the little changes here and there, and they're kicked up and they're modernized, and we remake them as our technology improves. And so I'm not surprised. Maybe they did it a little too soon. I'm not surprised. I always thought that of all the recent remakes, Nightmare on Elm Street would lend itself benignly to the new technologies. Why? Because so much of the film exists in a dream landscape. So much of the movie exists in the nightmare, in the subconscious of your potential victims, the children of the parents whose sins have been put upon them. And so you have this place to get stylized. I thought they would go more in the direction of that. Somebody help me here, that Robin Williams movie where the paintings came alive. Yeah, I thought this is a chance to go to, what does that technology look like now? A little bit. And I think they maybe adhered too much to what Wes had done instead of really thinking about just expanding it a little bit. I mean, I love the image of Jackie coming out of the wall and curving serpentine, but I don't love it more than me putting my face up against a piece of Home Depot cheesecloth with a crucifix. I don't love it more, and I want to love it more. And it's not, I'm certainly not saying it's Jackie's fault. I mean, I am so honored to hand the baton to Jackie. This is a guy I've loved. You know, he invented the slacker dude. If any of you have seen Breaking Away, before your Austin guy, Kevin, you know, way before Kevin had, you know, Silent Bob and his dudes and his slackers, before Sean Penn ever did Surfer Dude in Ridgemont High, Jackie Earl Haley did Breaking Away and invented that guy and made us care for him from the heart. Jackie Earl Haley's the best thing in Watchmen. Am I lying? I'm dying. Did you guys see Jackie Earl Haley cook in Shutter Island? Goddamn movie came alive. Stood up on its hind legs when Jackie Earl Haley went up to those bars and screamed at Leonardo. He's a great actor. I'm not nothing. I mean, I'm honored to hand Jackie the baton. It's, you know, and it's a great cast. I'm a fan of Clancy Brown's. I'm a fan of Connie Britton's. You know, you have people here. I mean, my God, you know, Jonathan from Sarah Connor Chronicles, and kid played my son in that in a movie I did with Brian Cox. The actors are wonderful. Rooney Mara, you know, in the least screen time in the world in Social Network, justifies the whole movie. He invented Facebook for her. You know, I mean, these are really just talented people. And they're going to remake everything. And you have to, as an actor, you have to make peace with that. You want to know what my real feeling is? I just feel real old the last year and a half because they remade both Fee and Freddy. And those, you know, those were my first, that's the first time anybody ever bought me a drink. You know? And so I feel a little old, but now they're buying drinks for Jackie and whoever that doll is playing Anna. Who is she? Man, is she good. Okay. She's hot. She's the only one on that. She's on a whole other level on that show. If you ever watch the newbie, that girl is playing Anna. She's not afraid to act. I love actors that aren't afraid to act, you know. I'm getting sick of all these people on TV now that can't handle their exposition. They whisper everything like Clint Eastwood. I killed my brother. I raped my sister. I dismembered my father. Please pass the salt. Are we getting in the plane and are we going to go look at forensic evidence? Yeah. Is that a volcano erupting? Yeah. contract says act. I like people that act. Here, I'm committing myself. I'm gonna act. Anyway. Okay, questions? Yes, I'll go to the aisle. I'm saving you. You didn't shave, you're in big trouble. Man on the aisle, yes sir. No, first guy, yeah. Plaid shirt. Stand up. Well, Eaten Alive was originally called Death Trap. Toby Hooper. Toby Hooper, Wes Craven. How many times have I worked for these guys, right? The best. Toby Hooper's got an IQ of about 600. I was sitting to Toby Hooper in an Arab neighborhood south of Tel Aviv. Call to prayer. Old Jaffa. Cobblestone streets built by the Turks that naturally breathe the sea breezes. We just worked an 18-hour day. The sun's still in the sky. We're looking out on a reef. They serve us a pitcher of vodka and lemonade and sardines, catch of the day, for an appetizer. Nancy's with me. And Toby looks out and he goes, I think that's the reef that they in the Greek myth where they shackled the girl and it ate her liver and regurgitated it. And she grew wings and no, but he's just like on, and he was right. That's the reef. Toby knows Toby's like John Carpenter. If you could get John Carpenter and Toby Hooper on a panel and let them talk about rock and roll, you should hear them talk about rock and roll. I mean, whether it's Stevie Ray Vaughan or before, they go way back. They can tell you Buddy Holly sideman stories, the illegitimate bastard son of Jeff Beck. I mean, they're just so wonderful. I walked on the set for Eaten Alive, which was called Death Trap, with Audrey Hepburn's husband, Mel Ferrer, Academy Award-winning actress Carolyn Jones. We've got high hopes, we've got high hopes. Okay, slept with Frank Sinatra, slept with Elvis. My God. Is that some 20th century musical dick? I think so. I'm not done yet. William Findlay, Phantom of the Paradise, Brian De Palma's sisters, The Fury. The best mad scientist ever in Brian De Palma's sisters. He sleeps with Siamese twins and he cuts them off because he likes one better than the other. How sick is that? William Findlay, king of West Village right now. I'm not done yet. Marilyn Burns from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Neville Brand going psycho. And I've got to wrestle a rubber alligator in unheated water. Robert Englund, whose line is taken 20 years later and put in Kill Bill by Quentin Tarantino. I walk on the set, you guys, in this crummy little studio, which was an adjunct to Paramount Studios across the street. And I walk on my first day, and all these people are sitting around in their high director's chairs, these like Mel Ferrer, my God. And I walk on, and it's a forced perspective Victorian Texas rural house, kind of like the James Dean movie Giant. All beat to shit, wind machine, cottonwoods, tumbleweeds, monkeys in cages on the veranda, Gila monsters in cages on the veranda, a two-door Cadillac convertible, 1967, parked in front. And it's like I'm there. It's like everything I saw in my mind's eye reading this script. And there's Toby Hooper with a Sherman, the brown cigarettes, remember those? Robert, I'd like you to meet me. And that was it. We were off, and Neville Brand, just going for it. Neville Brand has semi-documentary Cassavetes-like movies from the early 50s that are so extraordinary before he became a television cowboy star. He was right up, and people forget that Neville Brand and Aldo Ray and guys like that started out doing just some remarkable work on par with Ernest Borgnine and Marty. And now we tease a little bit because we think of Ernie Borgnine. He's that old guy, that was in Airwolf. But it's not fair. It's not fair. People used to, I remember when people in my snob world would criticize Leonard Nimoy. I know that Leonard Nimoy was off Broadway doing Jean Genet in outrageous productions about gay prisoners in the 50s. You know, just amazing theater. And you got to know that before. I mean, it always drives me crazy when I see people on talk shows or the entertainment shows generalize about people and not know the whole volition of their career. Another question before I digress more. Yes, right here.
Yes, how was it working with Wes Craven? Did you guys work together on developing the character as you did more films, or was it?
No, everything that's great about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is Wes Craven. We broke some rules in part 2. The only thing I did that I bring to the part is my physicality. I had just seen Nosferatu with Isabella Gianni and Klaus Kinski. And Klaus doesn't wear, his vampire is bald. And when I saw the makeup designs and I worked on the makeup with David Miller, I thought it might be interesting to reveal Freddy at some point bald. There's something phallic about a bald man, let's be honest here. I mean, that's kind of what you look like. I think it's where the word dickhead comes from anyway. Maybe not. Anyway, cheap joke, but I need any laugh I can get. The point is, Wes created all that, and the fedora was Wes, and the sweater was Wes. At the last second, and this is in my book, but I'll tell you, those of you that haven't looked at it, the last second, just before we began shooting, Wes or Bob Shea, or both of them collectively, lost a little bit of courage in certain things, and they were second-guessing a couple of things, and I walked into the old Desilu storage room where they had a, urine-stained futon on the ground with Bob Shea and Wes Craven sitting on it, and both those guys are tall, good-looking men, and they were look kind of funny down low on the ground on this little futon couch with a giant box from Western Costume full of hats. And all I could think of was this old routine on the Jack Parr show that Jonathan Winters did, where they set up a series of door flats, and Jack Parr would knock at every door, and he'd open the door, and Jonathan Winters would have a different hat on and be a different character. And they kept putting these different hats on me. And I'm getting the Freddy makeup tweaked. They're hanging flanges of translucent flesh behind my ear. Dave Miller's got a brush up my nose, and he's got like a hairdryer up my butt. And I'm sitting there, and they're trying these hats on me, like this insane, surreal Jonathan Winters routine. And I remember they put a Papers Boy hat on me. Read all about it. One of those 30s paper. And that was it. I said, you guys, I said, Wes, it's in the script. It's in your mind's eye. The fedora, it means something. And I said, watch. And I put the fedora back on. And I stood so that I had a silhouette on the wall of this little storage room. And you could see the silhouette of Freddy with the hat. And then I did my little Bob Fosse tip of the hat. And I said, I'm going to show you this bald dickhead at some point. And the audience is going to be crazy. And then I turned to the cinematographer and I said, look. And I put the hat back on and I said, look, you can hide Freddy in the shadows of the brim. And that's what sold it. So if I did anything for Freddy is I saved the fedora, I fought for the hat, and I brought that kind of physical thing that Klaus Kinski and I kind of channeled together for Freddy. Question?
Let's get this guy in the front. This one.
Which one?
This guy. Yeah, you.
Back in '92, I had a bad friend.
You mean another director of Nightmare on Elm Street besides Wes?
Yes, sir. Like post work, what you really enjoy, and then also what do you look for in it?
I think what Rennie Harlan brought was very special. He sort of brought us into the MTV generation with a kind of kinetic editing on part 4. But I think we probably have to give a big gold star to Chuck Russell. Not only did Chuck Russell bring us The Mask, which really changed stuff, let's be honest, but Chuck Russell worked so hard on that movie, he had no budget. Rennie had more money to spend than Chuck. And Chuck put an awful lot of bang for the buck on that movie. And I got to say this about Chuck. He was the first guy on the set and the last one to leave. And I think if you polled the fans worldwide, as much as I think Nightmare 1 is the scariest, and as much as Nightmare 7, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, is my favorite, I think if you polled fans worldwide, the favorite is Part 3, and that is Chuck Russell's. What I look for in a director, I've directed. I think my heart lies with I like directors that have a little better respect with the words. There's a lot of great directors with camera, and if they communicate to that me, usually the second or third day, I see through their eyes, which is important for an actor. But I'm English trained, so my first English training is that you serve the writer first. An English actor will tell you if you're having a problem with a part or a character, and he'll say, what does another character say about you? Because what you have to realize, it's not always about your character. I learned this great lesson in film from a movie called Peggy Sue Got Married by Francis Ford Coppola. Now, we all tease Nicolas Cage now because of his tax problems, and he does every movie he's offered. Hey, good for him, Nick Cage in Peggy Sue Got Married, or other film, I can tell you about Birdie, I can tell you about a whole lot of stuff where Nick Cage kicks some serious ass, but Nick Cage in a film called Peggy Sue Got Married, it's one of the first times I've seen somebody a young actor, that understood the literary point of that film, which is, it's her point of view. It's Peggy Sue's memories. Everybody in that movie is how Peggy Sue thinks they were. You can't play your truth. You have to play Peggy Sue's perception. So he plays himself as a bumbling asshole getting old with a potbelly that sells cars. And when she remembers him as a geek in high school. What we see at the end of the movie is that all the black girls and all the black guys wanted him to be in a Motown group that became internationally famous, and he turned them down for Peggy Sue. But by Nick playing the asshole for the whole film, the clown that she wants or needs to perceive him as, it was this revelation to me that you can do that in film as well. I knew it about theater. I don't know why I didn't make that transference. We're so busy in America, the actors protecting themselves, protecting their stuff. The English will tell you, hey, the movie's called Jane Eyre. What does Jane Eyre think you look like? What does Jane Eyre say about what you wear and your personality? That's how you have to make your decisions about the character, which is a real revelation sometimes. Questions?
Yeah, this guy got co-opted. Go ahead.
Oh, the co-opted guy, the red shirt.
Back in '92, I had a
It's his iron legged. He's going to go through the roof here. Remember, he's got a jetpack on. Okay.
I had a bet with a friend over what the identity of Blackie from Nightmare Cafe would be. I bet that he was God. Do you have any clue?
Oh, no. Originally, we had to call it Nightmare Cafe. Guess why? Robert Englund and Wes Craven on NBC. Network memo. The original title, I think, was like Terminal Bar. We're purgatory. The cafe is purgatory. It's a last chance for people that may be on their way down, not to go down. They get one last fix it, one last do-over. And Jack and Lindsay was a suicide. I forget what Jack's thing was. Blackie was a gambler, but maybe a gambler at the turn of the century, but maybe a gambler with a heart of gold. We just all happened to be there together. And because of our various backgrounds, together we become a whole. All three of us together represent a complete personality. And that's sort of why we're there as sort of judge and jury of the people that pass through. And that's why we sort of become selective about who to befriend. But thank you for mentioning that show. That show was used as the production value quality standard for NBC, and then they canceled us, and it broke my heart. Got to work with people like Angela Bassett on that show, and who's the Bobby Slayton, the pit bull of comedy, just great, eccentric, wonderful, crazy people. And we were a little ahead of our time, but the opening credits of that show, I think, are still the best ever done. Next question.
We have time for two more questions. Two more. Let's go. Way in the back. Redhead. Yes, that's
Yes.
you.
What do you think of the character of Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, thus for the horror culture as a whole?
I will quote Wes Craven because on some poetic level this makes sense to me. Freddy Krueger's the bastard stepfather of us all.
Nice. All right, last one. Let's get our Freddy guy.
Freddy, get this guy a razor. 'Cause he's either Freddy or Fiddler on the Roof.
My question is, you have been typecast in many horror films, but if someone were to offer you to be in a romantic comedy movie, would you accept it?
I would have loved to have accepted a romantic comedy a couple of years ago, but I know what I look like now. I woke up. Hey, listen to me. I was up for Han Solo. But, guys, no, seriously, I know the business and I'm a professional. No, I literally wore the makeup for a long, long time. It didn't hurt me, but when I came out of it, I was older. I didn't quite know who that guy was. It wasn't the guy that went into the makeup. The guy that went into the makeup still got carded in bars. The guy that came out of the makeup, people got out of my fucking way. Okay? Now, and then the other thing is, when I hit my 50s, I started to look like Trevor Howard and George C. Scott's bastard child, you know? And I don't mind that. Listen to me. I don't mind that because I get to play. No, I love moving into these psychiatrists and bad daddies and doctors and mad doctors and yeah, I love this stuff. I mean, that's what I'm playing now, and it's fine with me. You know, you have to go that way. It's a new thing. You know, all those dreams you have stay the same your whole life. So I mean, I have a friend, a wonderful actor. You guys know the actor Michael Lerner. It's his brother Ken Lerner. I used to hang out with Ken Lerner, and we'd be, you know, and Ken loves a lot of sports. Ken would see Raisin in the Sun, starring Puff Daddy. And he'd say, and he'd call his agent, he goes, "Why wasn't I up for that part? I could do it. Ken, you're right." It's the same thing now. I'm not a there's no romantic comedy left. Now, I did you know, eventually, everybody that does genre work has to do a Killer Bee movie. And I did my Killer Bee movie, and I love the Sci-Fi Channel, and they treated me great over the years. And I love to work in Montreal, and I love to work in Quebec and Toronto. And I did my Killer Bee movie, but I got to work with with a child actress, and I hadn't worked with a child actress for a while. And I got to show my tender side a little bit in that, and be a little bit heroic, even though it was an over-the-top Killer Bee movie. And the point is, so those things do come my way. I get to show, you know, my tender side occasionally. Such as it is. Are we done?
We're done. Everyone, thank you. Robert Englund. And if you get a chance, stop by the table, talk to him, because he will tell you more and more stories. He is the guy. Thank you so much, Robert.